The air hung thick and heavy, a suffocating blanket of humidity. The air crackled with anticipation. The warnings had been issued, the evacuation orders given, yet nothing could truly prepare the people of New Orleans for the fury that was about to be unleashed. Hurricane Katrina, a tempest of monstrous proportions, was bearing down on the Gulf Coast. As dawn broke on August 29, 2005, the storm announced its arrival. Winds howled like banshees, tearing through the city, ripping roofs from homes and sending debris swirling through the air like deadly missiles. Rain lashed down in relentless sheets, transforming streets into raging rivers. The levees, New Orleans' only defense against the encroaching sea, groaned under the relentless assault. The city held its breath, a collective gasp of fear and uncertainty. Then, with a sickening crunch, the levees gave way. The deluge was swift and merciless. Water surged through the breached levees, engulfing homes, businesses, and entire neighborhoods in a matter of hours. The Big Easy, the city of jazz and Mardi Gras, was now a swirling vortex of destruction, its spirit seemingly as broken as its levees. Hurricanes are born from the marriage of heat and water, a union that takes place in the vast, open expanses of our planet's tropical oceans. In the cauldron of the tropics, where the sun beats down with relentless fury, ocean water evaporates, rising like steam into the atmosphere. This process is driven by the intense solar energy that heats the surface of the ocean, causing the water molecules to become energized and transition into vapor. This warm, moist air is the fuel that feeds these meteorological monsters. As it ascends, it carries with it the latent heat of condensation, which is released as the water vapor cools and condenses into clouds. This release of heat further warms the surrounding air, causing it to rise even more rapidly. As the warm air rises, it cools and condenses, forming towering thunderstorms. These cumulonimbus clouds can reach heights of up to 50,000 feet, creating a powerful updraft that draws in more warm, moist air from the ocean's surface. The Earth's rotation imparts a spin to these storms, transforming them into swirling cyclones. This phenomenon, known as the Coriolis effect, causes the air to rotate counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere, giving birth to the characteristic spiral shape of hurricanes. If conditions are just right, warm ocean water, low wind shear, and ample moisture, the cyclone intensifies, its winds whipping into a frenzy, its central pressure plummeting. The lower the pressure at the storm's center, the stronger the winds become, feeding off the energy provided by the warm ocean waters. Katrina followed this deadly recipe with chilling precision. It began as a relatively weak system, but quickly gained strength as it moved over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, where it encountered ideal conditions for rapid intensification. Born as a tropical depression in the Bahamas, it gained strength over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, morphing into a Category 5 hurricane, the highest and most dangerous classification. This transformation was fueled by the abundant heat and moisture available in the Gulf, which provided the energy needed for the storm to grow. Though it weakened slightly before making landfall, Katrina slammed into the Gulf Coast as a formidable Category 3 hurricane, packing winds of over 125 miles per hour. Its impact was catastrophic, with the powerful winds and heavy rains causing widespread damage and flooding. The storm surge, a wall of water pushed ashore by the hurricane's winds, reached heights of over 20 feet in some areas, overwhelming levees and inundating coastal communities. This surge was one of the most devastating aspects of Katrina, as it caused extensive flooding and destruction along the coast. Katrina's wrath served as a stark reminder of the awesome power of nature and the fragility of human infrastructure in the face of such fury. The aftermath of the storm left a lasting impact on the affected communities, highlighting the need for better preparedness and resilience in the face of future hurricanes. The storm's raw power was terrifying, but it was the human toll that truly painted the picture of Katrina's devastation. The winds howled with a ferocity that seemed almost otherworldly, and the storm surge swallowed entire neighborhoods in a matter of moments. Families were ripped apart, homes reduced to rubble, and lives lost in the blink of an eye. The scenes of destruction were heart-wrenching, with people wandering through the wreckage, searching for loved ones and remnants of their former lives. The storm's aftermath revealed stories of heartbreak, resilience, and the indomitable spirit of those who survived. Communities came together, determined to rebuild and support one another despite the overwhelming odds. In the lower Ninth Ward, where floodwaters rose with terrifying speed, residents scrambled for safety, seeking refuge on rooftops, in attics, and in makeshift shelters. The water seemed to rise without end, trapping many in their homes and forcing them to make desperate decisions. Many were trapped, their cries for help swallowed by the howling wind and the rising tide. The sense of isolation and helplessness was palpable, as people clung to whatever they could find to stay afloat. Vera Smith, an elderly woman who had lived in the lower Ninth Ward her entire life, found herself clinging to a piece of driftwood as the floodwaters surged around her. She had seen many storms in her lifetime, but nothing could have prepared her for this. Her home, filled with a lifetime of memories, was gone. The photographs, the heirlooms, the little mementos of a life well lived, all swept away in an instant. Her neighbours, many of them elderly or infirm, were missing. The community, once so tight-knit, was now scattered and broken, with many unaccounted for in the chaos. She was alone, adrift in a sea of despair. The loneliness was overwhelming as she floated through the flooded streets, hoping for a miracle. Across the city, similar scenes of devastation and desperation played out. Entire neighborhoods were submerged, and the once vibrant city of New Orleans was left in ruins. Hospitals were overwhelmed, their corridors filled with the injured and the displaced. Medical staff worked tirelessly, but the sheer number of patients made it nearly impossible to provide adequate care for everyone. The Superdome, a symbol of the city's spirit, became a shelter of last resort, its cavernous interior packed with tens of thousands of evacuees seeking safety, food, and water. The conditions were dire, with limited resources and growing tensions among the displaced. Amidst the chaos and despair, stories of human resilience began to emerge. Neighbors helped neighbors, strangers became friends, and acts of heroism shone through the darkness. The spirit of New Orleans, though battered, remained unbroken, as the community vowed to rebuild and rise again. Ordinary heroes' acts of courage in the face of disaster. In the face of unimaginable adversity, the human spirit found a way to shine. Ordinary people, their lives upended by the storm, rose to the occasion, displaying extraordinary courage, compassion, and selflessness. They became beacons of hope in the midst of darkness, their actions a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. Among these heroes was John Keller, a former Marine who used his small boat to navigate the flooded streets of his neighborhood, rescuing stranded residents, many of them elderly or disabled. With each passing hour, he risked his own life to save others. His only reward, the gratitude in their eyes. There was also Denise Moore, a young mother who, separated from her own children, opened her home to dozens of displaced families, providing food, shelter, and comfort to those who had lost everything. Her acts of kindness, small but significant, offered a glimmer of hope in a city shrouded in despair. These acts of heroism, large and small, became a lifeline for countless individuals and families. They demonstrated that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit could find a way to shine, offering hope, compassion, and a helping hand to those in need. The kindness of strangers, mutual aid, and community in crisis. In the aftermath of Katrina, the true meaning of community came to the forefront. The storm's devastation was unprecedented, leaving thousands homeless and entire neighborhoods submerged underwater. With formal systems overwhelmed and government aid slow to arrive, neighbors helped neighbors, strangers shared what little they had, and a spirit of mutual aid and solidarity emerged from the wreckage. People who had never met before came together, united by a common goal: survival and recovery. Makeshift relief centers sprung up in churches, schools, and private homes. These centers became lifelines for many, offering not just supplies, but also a sense of normalcy and community in a time of chaos. Volunteers, many of them evacuees themselves, worked tirelessly to distribute food, water, clothing, and medical supplies to those in need. Their efforts were often the difference between life and death for many affected by the disaster. They offered a shoulder to cry on, a listening ear, and a sense of hope to those who had lost everything. Emotional support was just as crucial as physical aid, helping people cope with the trauma and uncertainty of their situation. The spirit of generosity extended beyond the borders of New Orleans. Communities from all over the country mobilized to send help, showing that compassion knows no geographical boundaries. Donations poured in from across the country and around the world. These contributions ranged from essential supplies to monetary donations, all aimed at alleviating the suffering of those affected. People opened their homes to evacuees, providing shelter, food, and a fresh start. This act of kindness created bonds that would last long after the floodwaters receded. Musicians held benefit concerts, athletes dedicated their performances to the victims, and everyday citizens dug deep into their pockets to support the relief effort. These events not only raised funds but also kept the plight of the affected communities in the public eye. The response to Katrina, though imperfect, highlighted the power of human compassion and the importance of community in times of crisis. It showed that when formal systems fail, the human spirit can rise to the occasion. It showed that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, people could come together, support one another, and rebuild their lives brick by brick, act of kindness by act of kindness. The legacy of this mutual aid continues to inspire, reminding us that in our darkest hours we can find light in each other.